Welcome to the deep dive from KaiZen Entertainment. We're the place where we take these huge stories, these cultural moments, and we really get into them, pull out what matters so you walk away actually understanding what's going on.
Yeah, getting beyond just the surface level.
Exactly. And today, wow, we are diving headfirst into something that didn't just get attention, it completely changed the game for global TV. Squid Game.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
A phenomenon isn't even a strong enough word, really.
Right. And look, this isn't just about, the thrills and the brutal survival stuff. It's way deeper. It's this huge exploration of human dignity, uh, economic inequality, what happens to people under extreme pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission today really is to unpack that powerful intention from the creator, Hwang Dong-hyuk, behind what might be the show's most important line. We are not horses, we are humans.
Such a critical line.
So by the end of this, you'll get the complex themes, the character journeys, some really surprising ones, and the intense real-world stuff that actually inspired it all. You'll get a fresh perspective on why this thing hits so hard everywhere.
It's amazing when you look back. Squid Game, I mean, it just smashed all the expectations. It became Netflix's #1 most watched series ever, right? Topping the charts in, what was it, 93 or 94 countries?
Incredible numbers, and it still holds the record for most minutes watched, like 3.5 years later.
Which is wild in streaming terms.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Season 2 opened huge, 68 million views. Season 3, just 3 days, 60.1 million views, both debuting at #1.
So clearly the story just connected deeply.
It really did. Something universal there.
And to help us figure out why it connected so deeply, we've pulled together a whole stack of sources. We've got interviews with the creator himself, Won Dong-hyuk, which are fascinating.
Yeah, those are gold.
We've got critical analyses from all over, fan discussions, places like Reddit where people really dig in.
Oh yeah, the Reddit threads are something else.
And even stuff about the production design, how they built that whole world visually. So it's a real multifaceted look. If you're ready to peel back the layers, let's get into it.
Okay, so this unprecedented rise, it's not just hype, right? This show genuinely changed the game for non-English shows on global platforms, becoming the most watched by minutes viewed, and holding that record years later. It just speaks volumes.
The global reach was just staggering. #1 almost everywhere Netflix is available.
Yeah. And it wasn't just eyeballs, right? The critical acclaim, the awards, it was historic, making real firsts.
Definitely. 6 Emmys. That's huge. And Lee Jung-jae winning Outstanding Lead Actor Jung Ho-yeon for Supporting Actress. Those are massive wins for a non-English show on that stage.
Totally unprecedented. It showed a real shift in how international content was being seen, by audiences, but also by the big awards bodies.
And the SAG Awards, too. 3 wins there, and the first non-English series ever to win at the SAGs, plus a Golden Globe. These aren't just trophies. It's like proof of a major shift.
Exactly, a seismic shift.
Right.
And a big part of that was Netflix itself, their whole strategy. They're not just licensing shows. They're producing massive amounts of original content.
Yeah, right. They're both a content provider and a content production powerhouse.
Precisely. And their platform, this OTT streaming model, it was perfectly positioned to launch K-dramas globally in a way we hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new era of Hallyu, the Korean wave.
People talk about Hallyu 2.0, 3.0. Is this like Hallyu 4.0 now?
You could definitely argue that. Hallyu 1.0 was maybe more regional, Asia-focused. 2.0 saw K-pop breaking into the West. Now, with something like Squid Game, it feels like Korean culture is influencing everything: fashion, food, social discussions.
Yeah.
It's much broader. Hallyu 4.0, yeah, that fits.
And key to that global spread, letting that message really hit home everywhere, was Netflix's investment in, translation, but more than that.
Oh, totally. The dubbing and subtitles were crucial. They didn't just do basic translations. They were kind of professional dubbing in like 13 languages, subtitles in over 30.
Wow.
And the goal wasn't just accuracy. It was about preserving the cultural nuances, the emotional weight, the satire, all that stuff that makes Squid Game so rich.
Absolutely vital for a show this layered. You need to get those nuances right, or the whole thing falls flat internationally.
Yeah, it let Hwang Dong-hyuk's vision, his deeper messages, really cut through. Which brings us to Hwang himself. One of the most interesting things is how Season 3's ending changed.
Oh, right. He initially planned for Gi-hun to actually escape and reunite with his daughter, didn't he?
He did. That was the original plan. But he made a conscious choice to change it. He felt the original ending, that happier ending. It just didn't line up with the world today.
That's fascinating. So why shift to the self-sacrifice? What was he trying to say with that, bringing Gi-hun's journey and the game itself to that specific close?
I think it shows how his thinking about the core message evolved. A neat reunion for Gi-hun. Maybe it felt too easy, almost like a betrayal of the show's brutal honesty.
Yeah, maybe too Hollywood.
Perhaps. He actually said it very clearly. His core
Right.
message was, and I'm paraphrasing slightly here, if we only look out for ourselves, refuse to sacrifice or bear any costs, and don't work together, we basically have no future.
Wow. That's blunt.
It is. And he saw Gi-hun's final sacrifice, giving his life for the baby, as the message we need to hear today. It's about selflessness, collective good over just individual survival, a direct hit at the self-serving nature he sees in society.
Chilling, but really powerful. And it makes even more sense when you learn how deeply rooted Gi-hun's character and the whole show really is in actual real-world events, specifically labor struggles.
Oh, absolutely. Hwang didn't just invent a gambler struggling with debt. Gi-hun's backstory, his trauma, is directly inspired by the incredibly violent 2009 Ssangyong Motor Company strike in South Korea.
Can you paint a picture of that? Because the parallels are apparently quite stark.
They are heartbreakingly precise. So Ssangyong Motors laid off over 2,600 employees. Just suddenly, livelihoods gone, massive debt looming for many. This led to a desperate factory occupation that lasted 77 days. Workers barricaded themselves inside.
Wow. 77 days.
Yeah, and the response was brutal. Riot police moved in. The workers had, slingshots, maybe some steel pipes. They were facing rubber bullets, tasers, tear gas. It was incredibly violent.
So it was like a siege. The life or death stakes we see in the show, that was real for them.
Exactly. And the aftermath was arguably even worse. Mass injuries, yeah. But also crippling legal battles that ruined people financially. And the most tragic part, about 30 deaths were linked to the strike. Suicides, stress-related illnesses, all stemming from the pressure, the debt, feeling abandoned.
God, that's awful.
So that real-world experience of life and death stakes in a controlled environment, the factory occupation, it directly mirrors the show. It shows how quickly ordinary people can hit rock bottom, making the desperate gamble of the game seem almost understandable.
And that critique, the idea of people becoming disposable commodities, it goes even further back, right, to the Brothers' Home incident. I mean, I didn't know much about that.
Yeah, the Brothers' Home is a really dark chapter in South Korean history. From the 60s to the late 80s, basically, the government had this policy of cleaning up vagrants. But vagrant could mean almost anyone not rich or powerful, homeless people, kids, people considered undesirable.
So they were just rounding people up.
Kidnapped off the streets by police, forced into institutions like Brothers' Home. And inside. It was horrific. Forced labor, beatings, sexual assault, starvation. There are even accounts of guards selling organs of inmates who died.
That's unbelievable. How does that connect to Squid Game specifically?
It's that metaphorical parallel. The powerful, shadowy system exploiting the vulnerable for profit and, in a way, entertainment or order. In Brothers' Home, the state sanctioned this abuse. In Squid Game, the ultra-rich VIPs watch the desperate play these games for their amusement.
Like watching horses race, as the show says.
Exactly. It's a grotesque spectacle where human lives are just pawns. It highlights that core theme of dehumanization, reducing people to commodities, their suffering becoming entertainment. It's a chilling, real-world backdrop.
It really grounds the show's fantasy in something terrifyingly real. Okay, let's shift gears a bit to the games themselves, because one of the brilliant and maybe most disturbing parts is how they take these innocent kids' games and twist them. Season 1 was full of iconic examples.
Absolutely. The genius is subverting that familiarity. Take red light, green light. Everyone knows some version of that game, right? Statues, grandmother's footsteps.
Mugunggwa kochi pyeotseomnida in Korean. The hibiscus flower has blossomed. Sounds lovely.
Exactly. But then you have that giant, creepy killer doll and the instant shocking violence. Any mistake, you're out. Permanently. It immediately sets the tone. Innocence is gone. This is deadly serious.
And then Dalgona, the honeycomb candy game, pipapchi, looks simple but became such a symbol of the show's tension.
Yeah, dalgona is this popular Korean street candy. Traditionally, if you perfectly carved out the shape, you got a free one. A fun little challenge.
Right, low stakes.
Totally. But in the game, it's life or death. The tiniest crack, one impatient move, and you're eliminated. It's a perfect metaphor for how fragile life is for those on the edge, how one tiny mistake in a rigged system leads to ruin.
Tug of War, Jildarigi also has deep cultural roots, right? Like for good harvests.
Yeah, it's often a communal festival game. But in Squid Game, it marks a big shift. The earlier games were you against the system, kind of. Tug of War pits teams directly against each other.
You have to actively pull the other team to their deaths.
Exactly. Raw, physical confrontation. You need teamwork to survive, but survival means directly causing others' deaths. It forces that horrible choice. Cooperating, killing, or die. Strips away any illusions.
But the marbles game, I think for a lot of people, that was the emotional low point, the sheer cruelty of it.
Oh, absolutely gut-wrenching. They tell you to partner up, so naturally you pick someone you trust, maybe care about.
Your friend, your spouse in that one tragic case.
And then, boom, the
Oh.
twist. You have to take all their marbles, meaning one of you eliminates the other. It's psychological torture, that husband and wife, where one loses,
Yeah.
the other just gives up. It hammers home the cruelty. It forces characters, and us, to confront the absolute moral depths.
And the last big one from season 1, Glass Stepping Stones. That one felt different, almost like a game show set.
It did. And it's the only Season 1 game without a direct, real-world kids game origin, though it's clearly like hopscotch. It was designed to be spectacular, emphasizing the entertainment for the VIPs.
And completely unfair, especially when the front man turned out the lights.
Right. That moment was key. It showed the game isn't about fairness. It's rigged. The powers that be change the rules whenever they want, ensuring their amusement and the player's demise.
Then in seasons 2 and 3, they introduced new games. The recruiter games, Bread and Lottery and Russian Roulette, weren't childhood games at all.
No, those were straight up predatory. They immediately show how desperate people are before they even enter the main game, willing to risk death just for a chance. Highlights the external pressures.
Season 2 had that complex six-legged pentathlon. What games were in that?
It was a mix. Included classic Korean games like Dadokji flipping paper tiles, flying stone, throwing stones, Gongji balancing and catching little stones. But the twist was having one leg tied to a teammate. It forced cooperation, but also created huge vulnerabilities, another layer of interdependency and tension.
And season 3 just amped up the brutality, didn't it? Hide and seek with knives, jump rope, Sky Squid Game.
Oh yeah, hide and seek was terrifying. Red team hunts the blue team, red has knives, blue needs keys. We saw some truly awful deaths there. Youngi killing Hyunju, Minsu killing the shaman.
And Young-sik being killed by his own mother, Gyumja. That was hard to watch.
Agonizing. These aren't just games anymore. They're elaborate torture scenarios designed to break people physically and psychologically.
The visual design of these arenas is just as key. That pentathlon arena in season 2, you mentioned the rainbow-colored track, the childlike appearance. That contrast is jarring.
Totally intentional. That playful look is meant to mess with your head, evoke anxiety and relief in Gi-hun, because it echoes the red light, green light field. It underlines the show's point. Beneath the surface of fun or fairness, the reality is brutal.
And the circular track itself, symbolizing the endless competition, infinite conflict, and suffering. It's like a hamster wheel of death.
Exactly. And Season 2's Mingle Arena, with the carousel, that adds another layer. It's designed from the front man's own warped memories, like an amusement park he might have wanted to visit with his wife and child.
Wow, that makes it even darker, using lost innocence as a setting for more cruelty.
Yeah, it hints at his own trauma, how it twisted him. And even the small props, the D squares, the marbles, the honeycomb cutters, they're all constant reminders of childhood innocence corrupted. It's relentless visual storytelling.
Let's talk characters, because they really carry these heavy themes. Gi-hun, player 456, he starts as the struggling dad, gambler, drowning in debt. His journey is huge, isn't it?
It's central. He begins as flawed, relatable in his desperation. But through the games, he undergoes this profound moral and emotional transformation. Initially, it's just about survival for him and his family.
But by season 3, he's different. Weighted down by guilt, right?
Immense guilt and failure for surviving when others didn't. He's at this critical crossroads. The director even noted his good intentions start to crumble a bit. He becomes driven more by revenge against the system than just saving people. It gets complicated.
Which leads to that final act, choosing death to save the baby, declaring, "We are humans, not horses." It feels like the ultimate statement. How does that land with the VIPs, with Inho?
It's a massive act of defiance. It totally shocks the VIPs, who see players as things. And it deeply affects Inho, the frontman. Gi-hun's unwavering assertion of dignity, even dying, forces Inho to confront the humanity he tried to extinguish in himself and others. It challenges the entire game's logic.
Gi-hun's arc reflects the whole spectrum of human nature we see. His relationships with allies like Sangwoo, Sabiak, Il-nam, they're constantly tested.
Absolutely. Sangwoo, the childhood friend, brilliant but ruthless. He represents that cold, rational calculation under pressure. Then Sabiok, the defector, tough exterior but driven by love for her brother. And Il-nam, the kindly old man who turns out to be the architect of it all. Just devastating betrayal. These relationships aren't just plot. They're where values get tested by fire.
The games force these impossible choices. Sang-woo killing Sae-byuk is brutal, but you framed it as a rational response to an impossible situation. Can you expand on that, especially contrasting him with Ali or Ji-young?
Okay, rational doesn't mean right, obviously, but within the game's twisted logic, Sang-woo acts to maximize his survival chances. He calculates, eliminates threats, even people he knows. It's utilitarianism taken to a horrifying extreme.
Right.
But Ali represents pure loyalty, tragically naive perhaps, but fundamentally good. And Ji-young, seeing Sae-byuk has more to live for, chooses sacrifice out of compassion. They retain their dignity, proving humanity can endure even then. They're like counterpoints to Sang-woo's darkness.
We also have Detective Jin-ho infiltrating the island to find his brother, the front man. That adds a whole other layer of tension. His search continues in seasons 2 and 3, and he eventually escapes with Kyung-suk and No-il. That gives his arc more weight, maybe?
I think so. Jun-ho is our window into the system from the outside. His persistence, despite everything, represents that fight for truth and justice. While some felt his storyline dragged a bit initially, his success in sating Player 246 and escaping with others does give his struggle real impact. It shows the system isn't totally invulnerable. There's still resistance.
Season 3 brought in key new characters, too, facing their own tragic ends. Jun-hee and her baby, Kyung-suk, Yoon-gi.
Yeah, Jun-hee, Player 222, and her baby become central. After Jun-hee dies, the baby technically becomes Player 222. Kyung-suk, Player 246, is rescued by Jin-ho and No-il, showing that connection matters. Yoon-gi, Player 333, the baby's father. Their fates all feed into Gi-hun's final decision, reinforcing the themes of cost, sacrifice, and maybe a sliver of hope for the future generation.
And looming over everyone are the organizers, the masked guards, the VIPs. Those masks are so symbolic. Dehumanization, anonymous power, right?
Exactly. The Gar's identical masks turn them into faceless tools of the system. No individuality, no responsibility. The VIP's elaborate animal masks do something similar for the elite. They hide behind their privilege, watching suffering like a sport, totally detached. It's a visual critique of unaccountable power.
The VIPs betting on lives as if they were horses in a race. It's the ultimate symbol of the ultra-rich disconnect, a core part of the show's capitalist critique.
Absolutely. And then there's the front man, Hwang In-ho, the enigma, former winner, former cop, now running the show. His motives are complex, hinted at joining the games himself when he had no hope left, leading him to believe humanity itself is hopeless. His journey from victim to perpetrator is tragic and adds this philosophical layer. Does the system inevitably corrupt everyone?
Which brings us right to that core theme. We are not horses, we are humans. This feels like the show's entire reason for being.
It's the central pillar. It's a blunt critique of capitalism, portraying what some call a performance burnout society, constant self-exploitation, competition above all else. The show argues that extreme capitalism strips people of inherent worth, makes them commodities valued only for labor or, here, entertainment. It holds up a pretty harsh mirror.
And the global context amplifies it, that widening gap between the super rich and everyone else. One source said the wealth of the 200 richest people is more than the income of 2 billion people.
That statistic is staggering. And the show suggests this disparity creates that inextricable swamp of debt, hopelessness, unemployment. The promise of globalization didn't lift everyone. For many, it deepened the trap. The powerful control the game, the players are pawns. It mirrors reality for so many.
Even the simple act of using numbers instead of names reinforces this dehumanization. What effect does that have?
It strips away identity, story, humanity. They become just game material. Psychologically, it might even make players feel protecting the game's structure is somehow in their interest, even as it kills them. And for viewers, it makes it easier to see them as statistics, not people, which is part of the horror.
So the games are this metaphor for survival of the fittest, reflecting cutthroat capitalism where the weak get left behind.
Brutal.
Very. But, and this is key, the show doesn't just show that, it also shows resistance. Ollie's kindness, Ji-young's sacrifice, No-il finding her will to live. They retain their humanity. They choose compassion or principle over pure survival. It proves that even in the darkest places, human dignity can persist. It's not entirely bleak.
Which makes Gi-hun's final declaration in Season 3 so resonant. We are humans, not horses, saying it right before sacrificing himself. Why is that the ultimate moment? Because it's the direct challenge to everything the game stands for. He rejects the idea that life is disposable, a commodity. By sacrificing himself for the baby, he reclaims humanity through selfless love, not through winning the game's dirty money. It confronts the VIPs, it confronts In-ho with a moral truth they tried to ignore. It asserts the intrinsic value of life.
And saving the baby, despite her parents, Joni and Myung-gi, dying in the games, becomes this symbol for the next generation, right? Hope for a future without this crushing debt and suffering.
Exactly. It's a tangible answer to Jun-hee's wish for her child to never need to suffer, the baby surviving, winning the money, being left with Junho. It's symbolic. Fragile hope, maybe, but hope nonetheless. That through sacrifice, maybe a better future is possible, where people are valued as humans.
Such a powerful core. Okay, let's look at how seasons 2 and 3 landed. Despite the years between seasons, they kept topping the charts, right? The show had serious staying power.
Definitely. And social media was huge for that. It just dominated conversation. Memes, reaction videos, theory threads on Reddit. Hashtag Squid Game got billions of views. Plus, Netflix did those immersive pop-ups, brand deals with Swiggy, Puma, Zara. It kept the show culturally relevant.
The Reddit fandom is intense. People speculating about hidden VIPs among players, like Park Min-soo, or Gi-hun becoming the next frontman. What drives that deep engagement?
It's the layers, the ambiguity. The show asks big questions and doesn't always give easy answers, so fans fill the gaps, debate meanings. The hidden VIP theory taps into that paranoia about unseen power. The Gi-hun frontman theory explores whether trauma inevitably corrupts. Fans aren't just watching, they're actively grappling with the themes.
Critically, season 3 got decent reviews, like 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. But audiences were more split, weren't they? Kind of half positive, half negative. What were the main complaints?
Some found the plot unsatisfying, maybe repetitive compared to season 1's novelty. The detective arc with Junho, some held it was pointless and dragged on, even with his eventual success. Yep. And the VIP acting in later seasons got a lot of flack, over the top, cheesy, undermining the serious tone for some viewers.
And the CGI, baby. I heard about that.
Oh, yeah. Widely criticized as terrible. Many felt it looked fake and was just a plot device, not really integrated emotionally.
The ending itself, Gi-hun's sacrifice, some saw it as contrived, maybe forced writing to set up spin-offs, not a natural conclusion. And the Hwang brothers' storyline, Junho and In-ho, felt underdeveloped, lacking a satisfying confrontation for many.
But plenty of fans defended season 3, calling it genius, right? What was their take?
They argued the grim ending, Gi-hun dying, was perfectly in line with the show's brutal reality. That's how it works in Squid Game, they'd say. A happy ending would betray the show's message. Some saw it as crushing but ultimately hopeful, echoing the director's intent about sacrifice. They valued the thematic consistency, even if it hurt.
And it helps to remember that seasons 2 and 3 were originally planned as one long season, just split for length. That probably affected the pacing. Yeah, that context explains a lot. Gi-hun's arc starts kind of ambiguously, getting captured in a box. His intentions crumble as he gets drawn back in. His final fights lacked that intense personal stake he had with Sang-woo in season 1, which some missed.
Junho's persistence does eventually pay off, though. Saving Gaeon-suk, escaping with no il, it gives his character closure.
It does, and the baby plot becomes huge. Junhee's sacrifice, Gi-hun protecting the baby, now player 222, the baby ultimately winning the prize money, and being left with Junho by the frontman. That's a massive, unexpected twist about what winning even means.
And we see ripples for other characters, too. Young-gi dies, Kyung-suk reunites with his daughter, Sae-byuk's brother finds his mother, thanks to Sang-woo's mom, which is poignant. No-il finds hope. These smaller threads offer some resolution.
Beyond the plot, the show's impact culturally has been immense. It massively boosted interest in K-dramas and Korean culture worldwide, really pushing the Hallyu wave.
It even showed up in academic research, right? More studies on K-drama and the Korean wave.
Definitely. And the social media explosion. TikTok was full of people recreating the games. That red light, green light doll was everywhere. Costumes, filters, huge user engagement.
And the soundtrack. Jung Jaeil's score is incredible. Pink Soldiers, way back then. So iconic and perfectly matched to the mood. Criminally underrated, maybe.
Absolutely essential to the atmosphere. The show's visuals also hit hard. Those green tracksuits, the pink jumpsuits, instant fashion statements, huge Halloween costumes. Brands like Puma, Zara jumped on it.
The surreal sets became symbols, too, popping up in art installations, events.
Yeah, permeated pop culture. But maybe more importantly, it sparked real conversations. About Korean culture, sure, but also about wider societal issues, the mental toll of financial stress, coping mechanisms, even LGBTQ+ representation with Cho Hyun-joo in season 2. It opened up dialogues.
So season 3 wraps up Gi-hun's story. His sacrifice ensures the baby's future, and the Korean games seem finished in that form.
Right, that specific game seems over. But then that final scene, chilling. The frontman in L.A. watching a U.S. recruiter, Kate Blanchett, amazing cameo, playing Dakji, it screams, "The game has gone global."
So this system, the exploitation, it continues. It's bigger than Korea.
Exactly, which leaves some things open. That lack of a final Jin-ho-home confrontation disappointed some fans, left their relationship unresolved.
Do you think that was deliberate to keep focus on the system?
Could be. Keep the focus on the bigger picture, the game itself as the villain. But it also perfectly sets up spin-offs. An American Squid Game seems almost inevitable now. Wang himself mentioned additional ideas for spin-offs, maybe even prequels. And fans are desperate for a frontman prequel, right? Seeing Yin-ho win his game in 2015, his whole descent into becoming part of the machine.
That's a story many people want to see. How does a winner become an enforcer? It's compelling. So while Gi-hun's specific story might be done, as Hwang said, spin-offs are ready to write, the universe has huge potential globally. What a journey this show takes you on. It really is more than just a thriller. It's this massive commentary on inequality, humanity under pressure, dignity, all wrapped up in something utterly gripping. It makes you ask uncomfortable questions.
It really does. That core message, we are not horses, we are humans, hits so hard because it speaks to anxieties we all feel about worth, competition, compassion in the modern world. It's a reminder of our shared humanity.
So, as we finish this deep dive from KaiZen Entertainment, here's something to chew on. If the games are global now, if this cycle of desperation exists everywhere, what does it really mean for us in our lives to live that idea, we are not horses, we are humans? Especially when the economic pressures out there can feel like a game we never chose to play. What message from all this resonates most with you? We genuinely love to hear what you think about this incredible show and its powerful themes. Let us know in the comments below. Did this deep dive help clarify things for you? Maybe give you a new angle? If so, feel free to let us know. Maybe share it with someone else who's fascinated by Squid Game. Your engagement helps KaiZen Entertainment keep bringing these explorations to you. And definitely tell us what other shows, movies, or cultural phenomena should we dive into next. We're always looking for ideas from you.